Before I ask the Premier to announce the winner of the 2017 Pemulwuy Prize, just a couple of quick questions. The first one's the obvious one. I've had fun all day and I've probably caused you a few questions we're both a couple of avowed Republicans, but we both share, I think, a bit of a love for Commonwealth Games. We have audaciously suggested today to formally ask your government to maybe consider, do the sums, if there's a business case, to think about the chance of Western Sydney hosting a Commonwealth Games. First, don't expect for first blush response. If we can mount a case and the councils and the committee come to you to put our argument of why the government might be able to see if there is a legitimate business case.
Yeah, look, if the case takes up, definitely. And I love the thought of Greater Sydney, especially Western Sydney, being the events capital of the region, not just of our state. So anything we can do to attract those global events is a positive for the region. It's an opportunity for us to show off all the great stuff that's happening here. So I'm always open to those suggestions. And if it stacks up, we'll be in for it.
You're a very successful treasurer and banker, so we know if it doesn't stack up, it won't work. So you're a tough room, and we're going to help try and mount that case.
Thank you.
Secondly, you also know there's been a genuine debate going in this region. Your predecessor stood on this stage a year ago and said the haters can hate all they like. You're getting the powerhouse. You're getting all of it. It's going to be magnificent. The ambiguity that's been there. Are you comfortable now? We can in this room.
Oh, look, we've always said, and we've always been consistent to say that we're going to have a world-class cultural institution right here in Parramatta, which isn't Western Sydney, it's on the edge of Western Sydney. But why shouldn't this region have the best institutions in the nation as part of it? And anyone who argues against that is arguing against what is logical. So we're absolutely committed to that. We're looking at all opportunities we have to expedite the creation of that cultural icon. But I hope it will be the first of many national iconic institutions that form part in this part of New South Wales, but also further west as well, because further west is where the growth's happening. And we're right on the edge of the growth as we stand here.
As we said earlier today, the people of the West have been paying their taxes to fund cultural institutions for 200 years, so they want to get some of them, so that's great. Thank you for that. Last one, as to the further west, I know you're working with the federal government on reviewing both Metro Rail and East-West spine and what we call the missing link, the north-south spine, the corridor from basically Castle Hill to Campbelltown type approach. Where do you think the timing on those projects going to come? Are we waiting for the city deal? Is everything tied together? Because we've got a Greater Sydney Commission district plans, we've got the joint rail study, we've got city deal, we've got an airport decision. You get the sense it is all coming together to one big announcement.
No, definitely. It is definitely coming together, and I'm always the first one to put up my hand and say if there's a project that is worthy of funding, we'll make sure we find the money to fund a project. But I also think that when you are building a major piece of infrastructure like another airport in New South Wales, you need to consider who's going to use the airport. So we need to answer some fundamental strategic questions before we commit to the exact alignment of what the rail corridor might look like. But we've already started to reserve land. We're already investing literally hundreds of millions of dollars into the road network, and that's visible. If you go out near Badgerys Creek, you can't help but see all the road funding that we've already put in place. So we're working day and night to make sure the roads are ready, and we're also obviously working with our federal colleagues to make sure we get a great insight into the strategic plans for the airport so that we can progress also with our transport options.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, the last function we'd like the Premier to perform instead is to announce the 2017 Pemulwuy Prize. You missed the first part of the ceremony before, Premier, but just a reminder, the candidates that which our patrons had to decide, never easy. Firstly, a couple of in your own shop, Excellence in Public Policy, the Greater Sydney Commission, for effectively redefining the debate with Western Sydney and Central Sydney at the core of the city and not being fringe dwellers to be worried about, but the role they play, to Sarah and Lucy and Jeff and everybody who's brought that home. To the Western City's Diabetes Initiative, your Western Sydney Health, together with the Primary Healthcare Network for the federal government, together with educational partners and others that have been able to address that, what is unfortunately a tsunami of diabetes across the region. To Celestino, John Vassallo and his team, be it for delivering a Sydney Science Park and the first STEM school, their support for Blue Dado out the front, if you haven't visited there, a program that teaches kids in Western Sydney to make better decisions about driving, particularly underage driving, and for the work on the Western Sydney Rail Alliance. To the Academy program here at the university that's training the leadership cohort for the future, 3,000 elite students in a program across all faculties here for their innovation and education. To the Sydney Business Chamber, to Borge and his team for their advocacy they've done on a range of issues, particularly including Westmead and the powerhouse particularly. And lastly, to the wonderful Amnakara Hassan, the power behind the Auburn Giants, who I know you know well, and what a success, and seemingly very popular winner of that category she was here today. Premier, the risk it's not a la-la land moment.
No, that's okay. Is there a drum
hand
roll?
over to you.
Drum roll anywhere?
Drum roll.
The Western Sydney Pemulwuy Prize recipient is... Thank you for the drum roll. I've got a bit more to say now. It's with great pleasure that I announce the winner of the 2017 Pemulwuy Prize as the Western Sydney Diabetes Initiative. And I invite Danny O'Connor, representing the initiative, to stage to say a few words.
Danny O'Connor, the Chief Executive of Western Sydney Local Health District, accepting on behalf of the team behind the Diabetes Initiative, as we said, taking on one of the most important social issues in this region. Danny.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Premier.
Well done. Yeah, you too.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this recognition of such an important issue in Western Sydney, and I am very grateful to the panel who saw fit to recognise the work that this coalition of people have been doing. Since the first European settlement of Sydney, up until around about the 1950s, Sydney has experienced a number of waves of diseases associated with the living conditions and social circumstances of the people affected by those diseases. Smallpox, measles, scarlet fever, smallpox again, Asiatic flu, and the plague. Most of these diseases, up until the mid-1950s, were defeated by government working with the people to deliver clean water, sewerage, waste management, pest control, better diet, and bigger houses. There are already more people with lifestyle-acquired diabetes in Western Sydney than were affected by any of these previous diseases that swept across Sydney. Recognising that lifestyle-related diabetes in many respects is rooted in the living conditions and social circumstances of those most affected. It's also very relevant to note that during the first 150 years of European settlement in Sydney, more Aborigines and more poor than anyone else suffered the consequences of these diseases that had their origins in social circumstances and living conditions. Today, the prevalence of lifestyle-related diabetes is far stronger in Western Sydney than anywhere else, and is very much related to issues of place, income, education, and ethnicity. You are twice as likely to have diabetes in Western Sydney than you are in Eastern Sydney and Northern Sydney. So, as with previous population diseases that mainly have their origins in the social circumstances under which people live, diabetes can be defeated. This will only occur through a coalition of effort by government at all levels, public health educators, media, ethical commerce, and where required, medical support and intervention. And today, there is also the prospect of social investment instruments assisting with this as well. Let's not find ourselves in 10 years' time with Western Sydney, amongst the many good things that are happening, also with the label of the diabetes capital of Australia. Thank you for the award.
Shuffle this way. There you go. One more. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please say a big round of Western Sydney applause to the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian. Thank you, sir.